It was sometime in the 1980s, a decade that, much like the universe itself, was expanding in directions nobody had properly planned for, that a fellow backpacker pressed a dog-eared paperback into my hands somewhere between a youth hostel and a questionable kebab stand, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I read the first page standing up, missed my train, and considered it an entirely fair trade. Here was a man explaining that the answer to life, the universe, and everything was 42, and somehow that felt more satisfying than anything my actual education had offered on the subject. I carried that book across the European continent, 2 lost rail passes, and 1 genuinely baffling conversation with a Belgian customs officer, and by the time I emerged on the other side, I was a fundamentally different person. One who would spend the rest of their life quietly convinced that the universe was in on a joke it hadn't quite got around to explaining yet. Adams himself put it best, and with characteristic precision. I may not have gone where I intended to go, but I think I have ended up where I needed to be. A sentiment equally applicable to backpacking, to quantum mechanics, and, it turns out, to life itself. Today, Douglas would have been 74, an age he would almost certainly have found both statistically improbable and rich with comic possibility. We ran this episode last March, and thought you'd enjoy this little rewind. Some things, much like a good paperback handed to a backpacker at precisely the right moment, are worth returning to.
Welcome back, my improbability-driven hitchhikers. I'm your quantum-superposed guide through the galaxy, simultaneously existing and not existing until someone offers me a proper cup of tea. You're tuned into a very special episode of the Multiverse Employee Handbook, the only podcast that treats the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything like a particularly challenging expense report form. But today, dear listeners, we're setting aside our usual interdimensional corporate shenanigans for something rather more important. A birthday celebration for the man who understood the cosmic absurdity of existence better than anyone who ever had the misfortune of being turned into a penguin at a party. That's right. We're honoring Douglas Adams, born on this day in 1952, which makes him, well, the age is complicated, especially considering the relative time dilation effects near the restaurant at the end of the universe. Now, you might notice this episode won't follow our usual format. Consider it less of a standard corporate training module and more of an interdimensional birthday party, where the cake might exist in a quantum superposition of chocolate and infinite improbability. After all, when celebrating the man who gave us pan-galactic gargle blasters and digital watches that were still a pretty neat idea, conventional podcast structures seem rather pedestrian. Today, we'll explore the strange cosmic coincidences surrounding the number 42. That innocuous little value, that deep thought, spent 7.5 million years calculating as the answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything. We'll examine how Earth narrowly avoids destruction with alarming frequency, and we'll reflect on how a man who wrote about the end of the world made so many of us feel less alone in this bizarre corner of the galaxy. So grab your towel, don't panic, and remember, in the vast multiverse of possibilities, this is one of the stranger podcasts you could be listening to, but far from the strangest. There are universes where this same content is being delivered by hyper-intelligent shades of the color blue, or where this entire episode consists of nothing but the word Belgium repeated in increasingly offensive tones. Consider yourself lucky, and should any Vogon construction ships appear in Earth's atmosphere during this episode, I suggest you lie down, put a paper bag over your head, and remember that the secret to flying is simply to throw yourself at the ground and miss. For the rest of you not immediately threatened with planetary demolition, stay tuned for a wholly remarkable exploration of the life and legacy of Douglas Adams. Before we dive into the improbable mathematics of the number 42, let's take a moment to appreciate the wholly remarkable man behind the infinite improbability drive. Douglas Noel Adams entered this particular timeline on March 11, 1952, in Cambridge, England, a location that would later prove statistically significant when calculating his probability of becoming a writer versus, say, evolving into a pot of petunias. Like many great authors, Adams began his creative journey early, receiving full marks for a story at age 10, an achievement his teacher found so suspicious that she accused him of copying it. One can only imagine her reaction had he submitted a manuscript about a depressed robot or restaurant operating at the literal end of time. After studying English at St. John's College, Cambridge, Adams found himself doing what most English literature graduates do, a bit of everything while hoping something would stick. He worked as a hospital porter, a barn builder, a chicken shed cleaner, and a bodyguard for a Qatari family. I'm not making any of this up, by the way. His career was more randomly assembled than a meal produced by a Nutramatic drinks dispenser. His breakthrough came in the most fitting way for a man obsessed with the cosmos, while lying in a field in Innsbruck, Austria, staring up at the stars with a copy of The Hitchhiker's Guide to Europe beside him. As Adams later recalled, "Suddenly the idea for The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy came to me." One has to appreciate the cosmic poetry of conceiving an interstellar travel guide while consulting an actual travel guide, though presumably the European version contained fewer references to Vogon poetry or the importance of carrying towels. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy debuted as a BBC radio series in 1978, transmitting Adams' unique blend of science fiction and philosophical absurdity across the airwaves of Britain. What followed was a multi-format expansion that would impress even Zaphod Beeblebrox's ego. The story evolved into novels, a TV series, stage adaptations, a rather questionable movie, towels, and a computer game so frustratingly difficult that it allegedly caused at least 3 cases of keyboards being launched into orbit. What's particularly remarkable about Adams' work wasn't just its humor, but its technological prescience. Decades before Wikipedia, he envisioned an electronic guidebook containing all knowledge about the galaxy. Before tablets and smartphones, he created the actual guide, a device remarkably similar to our modern handheld computers, complete with friendly interface and reassuring words. He essentially predicted audiobooks, online multiplayer text adventures, and even targeted advertising. Had he patented these ideas rather than just writing about them, we'd probably all be using Adams-branded iGuides instead of Apple products. His interests extended far beyond mere wordsmithing. Adams was a passionate environmentalist, collaborating with zoologist Mark Carwadine on Last Chance to See, a heartfelt exploration of endangered species that Adams considered his most important work. He was a dedicated advocate for Save the Rhino International, often appearing at fundraisers dressed in a rhino costume, a sight that likely confused many fans who expected him to be carrying a towel instead. Adams was also a notorious technology enthusiast. Supposedly the first person in the UK to own an Apple Macintosh computer and an early internet advocate who maintained a significant online presence when most people still thought the web was something spiders made. He was, in many ways, the perfect bridge between the artistic and scientific mindsets, a man who could write poetically about the beauty of the universe while also expressing genuine excitement about processing power and operating systems. His philosophical outlook was equally complex. A self-described radical atheist, the radical added, he said, to prevent people from trying to convert him, Adams nevertheless maintained a deep wonder about the universe that many would call spiritual. His famous analogy about the sentient puddle marveling at how perfectly its hole fitted, rather than understanding that the hole shaped the puddle, remains one of the most elegant rebuttals to certain theological arguments ever conceived. Perhaps the most infuriatingly endearing aspect of Adams' character was his relationship with deadlines, which he described with characteristic wit. "I love deadlines. I like the whooshing sound they make as they fly by." His editor at Pan Books reportedly once had to lock Adams in a hotel room for 3 weeks to force him to finish So Long and Thanks for All the Fish, bringing him regular cups of tea while confiscating his telephone. The fact that the resulting novel contains a character who spends weeks in a biscuit factory due to a misunderstanding seems, well, not entirely coincidental. Adams' circle of friends was as eclectic as his interests, ranging from evolutionary biologist Richard Dawkins, who dedicated The God Delusion to Adams, to members of Monty Python and Pink Floyd. He even played guitar left-handed with Pink Floyd on stage for his 42nd birthday, a coincidence not lost on devotees of his most famous numerical reference. And then, with the cosmic timing of a particularly dark punchline, Douglas Adams died suddenly of a heart attack on May 11, 2001, at the age of 49, far too young for a man whose mind seemed capable of generating infinite improbability. The universe, it seems, occasionally has a sense of humor that even Adams might have found a bit too on the nose. The loss triggered a remarkable outpouring of grief from fans worldwide, demonstrating how deeply his unique worldview had resonated. His memorial service featured readings and tributes from the giants of British comedy, rock music, and science, a testament to how thoroughly Adams had bridged these worlds in his too short life. Perhaps the most profound lesson of Adams's life and work is not that the universe is absurd, though it certainly is, but that our response to this absurdity matters. We can either panic at our cosmic insignificance, or we can pick up our towels, stick out our electronic thumbs, and embrace the adventure with a sense of wonder and a good cup of tea. And now, for something completely improbable, let's explore why the number 42 keeps turning up in the fabric of reality itself, like an interdimensional typo that nobody can quite manage to correct. The answer to the great question of life, the universe, and everything is 42, said Deep Thought, with infinite majesty and calm. Actually, that's not quite right. In the book, Deep Thought says, "I checked it very thoroughly, and that quite definitely is the answer." I think the problem, to be quite honest with you, is that you've never actually known what the question is. This pronouncement, delivered after 7.5 million years of calculation, is perhaps the most famous moment in Adams' oeuvre. A perfect philosophical punchline, highlighting how answers are meaningless without the proper questions. When later asked why he chose 42, Adams replied with characteristic simplicity, "It was a joke. It had to be a number, an ordinary, smallish number, and I chose that one." The cosmic joke, of course, is that ever since Adams randomly selected this number, people have been finding patterns and coincidences surrounding 42 that seem almost too perfect to be accidental, like the universe itself decided to retroactively justify Adams' choice through a series of increasingly improbable mathematical and physical alignments. Let's start with some genuinely fascinating astronomical connections. Ever wondered why rainbows form? Light refracts through water droplets at precisely 42 degrees to create that spectacular arc of colors. It's as if the universe coded a thank you for all the fish message into the very physics of rain. But it's in mathematics where things get properly weird. 42 is the only number where both itself and its double can be expressed as the sum of the digits of their respective squares. That is, 42 squared is 1764, and if you add up the digits 1, 7, 6, and 4, you get 18. Meanwhile, 84 squared is 7056, and if you add up the digits 7, 0, 5, and 6, you get 18 as well. This property is unique to 42, as if mathematics itself wanted to flag this number as special. Adams once jokingly explained that 6 by 9, 42. Being the ultimate question made perfect sense, noting that I may be a sorry case, but I don't write jokes in base 13. The cosmic punchline? In base 13, 6 multiplied by 9 actually does equal 42. The mathematician in me feels compelled to note that 6 times 9 equals 54 in decimal, but in base 13, that's written as 42. I'm not saying Adams was secretly doing calculations in alternative number systems, but I'm not saying it either. 42 is also the sum of the first 6 triangular numbers and the sum of the first 6 positive even numbers. It's a Catalan number, a Harshonic number, and has numerous other properties that make mathematicians raise their eyebrows and then quickly check if anyone spiked their coffee. In Japanese culture, the number takes on a darker significance. Shini, 42, sounds like death in Japanese, connecting 42 to mortality in a way that would have amused Adams' occasionally macabre sense of humor. The cultural references continue to accumulate like pan-galactic gargle blasters at a Beetlejuicean party. Jackie Robinson, who broke baseball's color barrier, wore the number 42, which is now retired across Major League Baseball. In ancient Egyptian mythology, 42 judges witnessed the weighing of the heart in the afterlife, a neat parallel to Deep Thought's role as the ultimate judge of cosmic questions. The Torah describes 42 locations where the Israelites camped during their Exodus journey, as if they were following some divine GPS system with a peculiar sense of humor. Even in computer science, 42 leaves its fingerprints. The ASCII code for the asterisk symbol is 42, which is commonly used as a wildcard character, something that can represent anything. Rather like the answer itself, it seems. Now, I can hear you thinking, which is worrying in itself, what are the odds of all these coincidences happening around one specific number? But that's the thing about an infinite universe containing infinite numbers. Coincidences aren't just possible, they're inevitable. If you look hard enough at any number, patterns will emerge. But perhaps that's the point. In trying to find meaning in the number 42, we're mirroring the characters in Adams' books, desperately seeking profound significance in what might simply be cosmic happenstance. As Adams himself might say, if you try to take a cat apart to see how it works, the first thing you have on your hands is a non-working cat. Similarly, if you pull apart these coincidences looking for cosmic significance, you might just end up with a non-working universe and a very confused cat. Yet the search itself becomes meaningful. We pattern-seeking apes can't help but look for connections, and in doing so, we create a form of meaning that transcends the raw data. Adams understood this paradox perfectly, that the universe is simultaneously meaningless and filled with meaning, depending entirely on one's perspective. So perhaps 42 is significant not because it's the answer, but because it teaches us that we've been asking the wrong question all along. And in a universe as vastly, hugely, mind-bogglingly big as ours, sometimes the best we can do is to keep our towels handy and not panic as we try to figure out what exactly it is we should be asking. And now, speaking of existential threats that might render all our questions moot, let's consider how remarkably similar Earth's actual history is to Adams's fictional planet, constantly on the brink of destruction for reasons that seem, in cosmic terms, utterly arbitrary. In The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Earth is unceremoniously demolished to make way for a hyperspace bypass, destroyed not through malice, but through something far more terrifying: bureaucratic indifference. As the Vogon captain announces over his PA system, there's no point in acting surprised about it. All the planning charts and demolition orders have been on display at your local planning department in Alpha Centauri for 50 of your Earth years. The punchline, of course, is that humanity is wiped out not by some grand cosmic purpose, but by what amounts to an administrative footnote in the great interstellar highway system. It's the ultimate bureaucratic nightmare. Your existence terminated because you failed to check the right filing cabinet several light years from your planet. The brilliance of Adam's scenario isn't just its humor, but how uncomfortably close it comes to the truth. Earth has faced similar arbitrary threats throughout its history, narrowly avoiding destruction through what appears to be cosmic luck rather than purpose. Consider the dinosaurs, who were having quite a decent run until approximately 66 million years ago, when a 10-kilometer-wide rock decided to make Chicxulub, Mexico, its final destination. This wasn't personal. The asteroid wasn't targeting T-Rex specifically. It was just cosmic chance. Like a Vogon constructor fleet choosing Earth rather than, say, Mars for its hyperspace bypass. But we needn't look into deep geological time to find Earth's near misses. In 2019, an asteroid designated as 2019 OK passed just 70,000 kilometers from Earth. Cosmically speaking, that's like finding out a bulldozer missed your house by mere millimeters. The particularly disconcerting part: astronomers only spotted it 24 hours before its flyby, giving us roughly the same amount of warning the Vogons gave Arthur Dent. Then there's the Tunguska event of 1908, where an asteroid or comet exploded over Siberia with the force of 1,000 Hiroshima bombs. Had it arrived just a few hours later due to Earth's rotation, it could have obliterated St. Petersburg instead of a few million trees. The cosmic timing feels less like physics and more like narrative convenience, as if the universe's author decided a near miss created better dramatic tension. But asteroids are just one entry in the encyclopedia of existential threats. Gamma-ray bursts, enormous eruptions of energy from dying stars, could sterilize half a planet without warning. If one happened within a few thousand light years and was pointed our way, we'd have no defense, no evacuation plan, not even time for a quick pan-galactic gargle blaster before the radiation hit. It would be, as the guide might say, bad news. Even our friendly neighborhood star isn't above trying to delete us on occasion. In 1859, a coronal mass ejection known as the Carrington event hit Earth, creating auroras as far south as Cuba and causing telegraph systems to spark. Were a similar event to occur today, with our delicate electronic infrastructure, we'd be facing damage to power grids, satellites, and communications networks that could take years to repair. Our technological advancement has, ironically, made us more vulnerable to cosmic temper tantrums. And then, of course, there's us, the supposedly intelligent species that's come remarkably close to vogoning itself multiple times without any extraterrestrial assistance whatsoever. In October 1962, during the Cuban Missile Crisis, we were one officer's decision away from nuclear annihilation. Soviet submarine officer Vasily Arkhipov refused to authorize a nuclear torpedo launch when his submarine was detected by American forces. Had he agreed with his fellow officers, the resulting escalation would likely have triggered a full nuclear exchange, Earth's destruction not by hyperspace bypass, but by hyperventilating superpowers. Similarly, in September 1983, Soviet Lieutenant Colonel Stanislav Petrov was on duty when the early warning system reported 5 incoming American missiles. Protocol demanded he report this to his superiors, which would have triggered an immediate counterstrike. Instead, Petrov decided it was a false alarm, correctly recognizing a glitch in the system. For want of a more bureaucratic decision, Earth continued to exist.
Yay!
These near misses highlight the strange paradox of Earth's existence, simultaneously incredibly fragile and remarkably resilient. We've survived cosmic impacts, supervolcanic eruptions, near-nuclear wars, pandemics, and climate shifts that should, by any reasonable calculation, have knocked us into evolutionary oblivion multiple times. Yet here we are, still evolving, still building, still wondering what it all means, while our planet hurtles through space at 67,000 miles per hour. This paradox is beautifully captured in Adam's works. Earth is destroyed almost as an afterthought, yet later reconstructed as part of the mice's experiment. The planet's destruction seems both inevitable and somehow inconsequential in the grand cosmic scheme. A perfect embodiment of what Adams calls the total perspective vortex, a device that shows individuals their size relative to the entire universe, instantly driving them mad through the realization of their cosmic insignificance.
Oh no!
Yet Adams doesn't leave us in despair. Instead, he suggests that this very insignificance is what makes life meaningful. In a universe without inherent purpose, we're free to create our own meaning, whether that's searching for the question to the answer, perfecting the art of flying, which, as we all know, is simply the knack of throwing yourself at the ground and missing, or simply enjoying a really good cup of tea. As Adams wrote in The Restaurant at the End of the Universe, there is a theory which states that if ever anyone discovers exactly what the universe is for and why it is here, it will instantly disappear and be replaced by something even more bizarre and inexplicable. There is another theory which states that this has already happened. In the face of cosmic absurdity, our response matters. We can either panic as the Vogon constructor fleet hovers overhead, or we can reach for our towel and muddle through with our sense of humor intact. After all, as the Hitchhiker's Guide itself advises on its cover in large friendly letters, don't panic. Well, my towel-equipped travelers through the galaxy, we've reached the end of our cosmic birthday celebration. Today we've learned that in the multiverse of coincidences, the number 42 is simultaneously completely random and suspiciously significant. Rather like finding your own phone number hidden in the decimals of pi and wondering if the universe is trying to tell you something or just has a peculiar sense of humor. We've discovered that Douglas Adams, like most prophets of the absurd, was both completely wrong and eerily right about everything. Though I suspect somewhere in the quantum foam of reality, there's a universe where he's still with us, eternally missing deadlines with increasingly creative excuses that somehow result in even better books. His legacy lives on not just in the millions of readers who still carry their towels on May 25th, but in every piece of technology that makes you think. This is exactly what Douglas Adams was talking about. From smartphones that are almost but not quite entirely unlike the Hitchhiker's Guide, to AI assistants that would probably fail the Turing test, but might pass the genuine people personality assessment with flying colors. And what would Adams make of our current world, with its social media algorithms, climate catastrophes, and artificially intelligent chatbots? I suspect he'd find it simultaneously more absurd and more predictable than even he had imagined. After all, this is the man who once wrote that the major difference between his fiction and reality is that his fiction had to make sense. Perhaps his most enduring gift was showing us that in a universe of infinite complexity, the best response might be neither blind panic nor blissful ignorance, but rather a kind of cheerful pessimism, a recognition that yes, the Vogon constructor fleet might arrive tomorrow to demolish Earth for a hyperspace bypass, but in the meantime, there's still time for a nice cup of tea. So as we raise our electronic towels to the man who taught us that the answer to life, the universe, and everything is 42, remember his most valuable lesson: don't panic, in large, friendly letters. And seriously, folks, for the love of all that's improbable, please share this episode with every hitchhiker, bobblefish, and paranoid android you know. Our marketing department, which consists entirely of a rather depressed robot named Marvin, has calculated that our listener growth metrics are even more dismal than his own perspective on existence. And that's really saying something. If you could possibly take a moment to leave a review, preferably one that doesn't just read mostly harmless, you might just save us from being fed into the total perspective vortex of podcast obscurity. Until next time, this is your quantum coherent correspondent, reminding you that in the vast improbability of existence, we're all just trying to find our way to the restaurant at the end of the universe. Though I suspect most of us will have to settle for whatever's in the break room fridge, assuming it hasn't achieved sentience again. So long, and thanks for all the fish.
The narrator, David, is a professional voice actor who has digitally cloned his voice, which, when you think about it, makes a lot of sense because it's the only way he could have ended up working for a company that spans the multiverse. Thumbnails are created using OpenArt. The music and sound effects come from Pixabay. Everything else, the research, the writing, jokes, and sound editing, is entirely made by me. My editing stack includes GarageBand and a silly old MacBook, an arrangement that proves that while the universe is infinite, the amount of processing power to make me sound coherent is just slightly more than this laptop possesses. To learn more about the show, visit our website and subscribe to our mailing list. Link is in the show description. Until next time, thanks for listening.